Yeah, Bernie Sanders again in 2024. Did you hear me stutter at all? No, you didn't. I make no apologies. I'm not being delusional. I say Bernie Sanders again, 2024. Whether he does that or not, that's up to Bernie Sanders. But the sentiment is there. Again, I must repeat myself. Bernie Sanders, believe it or not, is not a cult of personality, but we need him for the struggle because he's the one that's forced the national conversation. And I'm concerned that that as the 2020 election, no matter how it turns out, excuse me, I'm thirsty today. No matter how the 2020 election turns out, that the that that if it's Donald Trump, the country's just going to tiptoe for the right. If it's Joe Biden, we go back to some semblance of normalcy, which kind of created a situation where a Donald Trump, or it was possible for Donald Trump to win. And I'm concerned that we could have somebody worse than Donald Trump next time around if that were to repeat. And so I say that the cure for all this would be the convictions, the politics, the values of Bernie Sanders, which means a positive return to the past. Not the past of the Bill Clinton era Democratic Party, but the past of the FDR New Deal era of the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, as it tiptoes past World War II into the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when the Democratic Party was, for all intents and purposes, almost a labor party. And that's and the Democratic Party walked away since the especially since the 1984 election, the defeat of Walter Mondale. The Democratic Party been slowly walking away from that um, era, that point of view, and it manifested its ugliness in 1992 with the nomination of Bill Clinton. And as I said, Bill Clinton turn the party into the sewer it would become. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the Democratic Party sat there and they adopted some of the softer politics of the Reagan years. And they felt like they were defeated. So if you can't beat them, join them. And so the Democratic Party started increasing their corporate donations, even though they had them before, and they turned more and more a blind eye to the unions and felt like the labor unions were nothing more than an albatross, and and who needs them? And and but I hear the argument from many of these corporate Democrats and people who loves the establishment Democrats, and they're perpetually their mindset's perpetually locked in the year 1992. They can't see beyond it. They'll be like, Bill Clinton won 1992. He was reelected in 1996. Barack Obama won in 2008, and he was reelected in 2012. Well, hold on to that thought. Well, there's a reason for that. Bill Clinton's winning the election in 1992 was not because he was so awesome. You had a Republican Party who were fatigued with George Herbert Walker Bush, and then Ross Perot came in there and took some of those voters away, which made it possible for Bill Clinton to win. The only thing that was good about the 1992 election was not necessarily the turnout, because looking back in retrospect, I think Bill Clinton was a sack of shit, and I thought that George Herbert Walker was a sack of shit then, and I still think that the late George Herbert Walker Bush was a sack of shit. My position on the Bush family never changed. I despise the Bush family. Um, Bill Clinton got reelected in 1996 for the same reason he was elected in 1992. H. Ross Perot came in and took votes away from Bob Dole. Um, and what happened was that the 1990s was a decade that I personally didn't care for myself. personal problems at the time, just personal crap in my life. I won't divulge into it. It was not a very happy time in my life. However, one of the things I liked politically about the 1990s was the attractiveness of independent politics. Even though the two party system was still intact, there was a lot of people clamoring for independence at that time. Democrats were wanting an alternative to the Democrats. Republicans were wanting an alternative to the Republicans. And Green Party and the Libertarian Party kind of came in there and let the people know, hey, look at us. And the Reform Party did too. I mean, and then there were the Natural Law Party. So I would say the 1990s was a, a very positive time for clamoring of independence. But because of what happened in 2000, and people to this day blame Ralph Nader, especially the liberals blame Ralph Nader for George W. Bush winning. And this is what I don't understand. To this day, they hate Ralph Nader for making it possible for George W. Bush to win. And granted, George W. Bush was the worst president we ever had in the history of this country, the absolute worst. However, because of the Trump derangement syndrome, the Trump derangement syndrome, which is as asinine as the Obama deranged syndrome from the right during the 20 teens. The Trump derangement syndrome, a lot of these longtime liberals that used to hate George W. Bush with very valid and concrete reasons now consider George W. Bush an ally. George W. Bush murdered 500,000 people with the Iraq War. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis died. Thousands of American troops died. The world was made less safe because of George W. Bush. ISIS came into being because there was a void. A secular monster by the name of Saddam Hussein was removed, and then political instability took place afterwards because of the American occupation of Iraq. It was actually one of the dumbest foreign policy um, ever by the United States. I mean, every just about every war the United States has been involved with since after World War II has been pretty dumb, but Iraq took the cake. I mean, um, the region is more on fire, and fanatical fundamentalism in that region is alive and thriving because of the Bush Cheney foreign policy. Um, and the liberals today, they embrace him. They embrace him. They act like he's okay. He's a good guy. No, George W. Bush is not a good guy. Not one bit. But I'm divulging. I'm getting off track to what I was trying to say. The death of independent political action took place because of George W. Bush. They hate Ralph Nader, but for bringing Bush into power, supposedly. But now they love George W. Bush, and they still hate Ralph Nader. That's my point. They hate Ralph Nader for, and they and which is sad because people believe that Bernie Sanders kind of played the role of Ralph Nader in 2016, which is bullshit because Bernie Sanders endorsed Hillary Clinton. Although he did not want to, he endorsed Hillary Clinton. And I have an uneasy feeling that if Biden is defeated in 2020, that they'll blame Bernie Sanders again. And Bernie Sanders really believe that he's the cause of 2016's Donald Trump tiptoeing into the presidency, which he's not. And he doesn't want to be seen as the next Ralph Nader. But as somebody who's voted for Ralph Nader over the years, occasionally I voted for Ralph Nader in 1996. I voted for him in 2008, and I have voted pretty much, uh, pretty much in the 1990s to the very last election. I pretty much bypassed the two-party system, and I have voted Socialist Party or Green Party, and I even voted Libertarian in one election uh, because there was no choice really otherwise. I wasn't going to vote for, in 2012, I wasn't going to vote for Barack Obama, and I sure as hell wasn't going to vote for Mitt Romney. So I voted for Gary Johnson because at least the man was anti-war, and he turned against the death penalty, and he was for gay marriage and for marijuana legalization. I was like, well, okay, that's enough political positions that's meaningful that I can make a protest vote for it, even though there's a whole lot of politics that I disagree with the Libertarian Party. But getting back to Bernie Sanders was awesome in 2016. I was slightly less impressed with him in 2020. Still supported him. I'm not sorry I supported him. He was the candidate to support in 2020. But unfortunately, he decided to kind of tiptoe into being more of a mainstream Democrat, an independent that he is. He wanted to be kind of approved by some of the mainstream or establishment Democrats, which I'm sorry, that's not the way to go. That's not the way you build a movement. The way you build a movement is you maintain your sense of independence, even within the confines of a two-party system. I kind of wish he would have kept his 2016 independent streak, but he still was effective enough in 2020 that he caused a lot of aggravation and mental misery for the corporate Democrats. And for that, I am grateful. I am grateful because on some Facebook groups, there were some moderate Democrats, corporate Democrats, or people who are sympathetic to corporate Democrats having this. Well, darn it! Looks like Bernie Sanders going to get the nomination. I don't really want to. He's going to go. I don't want to do this. They were actually feeling the same way that many of my fellow progressives who hate the corporate Democrats but ended up holding their nose voting for the corporate Democrats were feeling. It was nice seeing pro-establishment Democrats sweating and having that kind of anxiety that many of my fellow progressives um, had for decades. But the thing about it is that in the year 2020, um, I am concerned that whatever the election results is going to be, that it'll be the death of the social democratic movement, and we must not let it die. We need to keep it going. I mean, the fact that America spent for the past 5 or 6 years been talking about social democracy kind of gave me a little bit of optimism because I can recall in the 1990s when someone like a Paul Wellstone was speaking on some of these news shows, they acted like, "Oh my God, what did the cat drag in?" They just looked at Paul Wellstone like he was an ugly redheaded stepchild, or during the 2000s with Dennis Kucinich, they act like, "Oh my gosh, what's his deal?" And they were kind of doing that with Bernie, and well, they do that with Bernie, but they are forced to have Bernie on these news shows because he's relevant. He's relevant, and they hate it. They hate the politics that he espouses. And I'm not talking about Fox. I'm talking about CNN and MSNBC and the regular network news. Strangely enough, as much as I crap on Fox News, and there's plenty to crap on them about even now, um, their treatment of Bernie Sanders been more positive than the mainstream media, and it's not because they love Bernie Sanders. Is that I kind of think they were kind of excited by the civil war going on inside the Democratic Party. They can't quite bring it out that there is a civil war going on inside the Democratic Party, but they sort of let you know by having Bernie Sanders on these talk shows. And so for all the people that crapped on Bernie Sanders for going on Fox, in the words of Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, he once said, "Go where you're not wanted. There's more to achieve." And this is where Bernie Sanders, and I'm saying this phrase in a very positive sense of the word, he did the punk rock thing, and he made it on these Fox News shows, and that way he exposed probably a very reluctant audience to his message. I think he probably opened a few people's minds in a positive way, and I think that he probably earned some supporters once they realized what Bernie Sanders' deal is all about. Well, in 2024, if Bernie Sanders decides to give it another shot, I don't give a flip how old he is. Do not give a flip. The fact that Bernie Sanders decides to run again in the year 2024, I will endorse, support him financially. I will endorse him and be his unofficial what's the term campaign surrogate online and yeah, on this channel and online everywhere and wherever I can spread this message because you know the message that he's conveying to the American people, the case he's making for um, democratic socialism or social democracy, take your pick. The case he's making is very mainstream in many of these countries around the world, our closest allies. I have to keep repeating that. What he's talking about is not the Soviet Union, and it's not China, and it's not North Korea, and it's not any of these police states that use fanciful rhetoric of how they're for the workers, to quote Barbara Einreich decades ago. Um, this is basically he's making a case for services and an economic system that's pretty much mainstream by our closest Western allies around the world that brought the good life to the people. And we're talking about governments that elect political parties by the name of Labor Party or Social Democrats, in some cases even socialists. And these countries are not police states. And we need to emulate the models that they have provided. That's been so successful that even those nations conservatives support it. I am talking about universal health care. I am talking about um, generous vacation time. Talking about generous pensions. Talking about societies where the gap between the rich and the poor are more narrow than it is here today. We do not have an American dream anymore in the United States. You want to know where the American dream is? The old American dream that used to exist here in the United States? It exists, our neighbors to the north, Canada. It exists in Norway, Sweden, Denmark. It exists in places like Australia and New Zealand. This is where the American dream kind of lives on. But the American dream died about 40 some years ago. We need to bring it back. I'm Bernie Bro. If you like this commentary, you know what you can do. Hit the like button, and if you hit like, and if you subscribe, it helps with the algorithms that goes on and it works in our favor on YouTube. YouTube ain't the YouTube it used to be. Although I would like to see the YouTube be the way it used to be when I first got up there. Gosh, those were the days when social media used to be fun. I would love to go back to that. Um, you can make it happen by pressing like and subscribing to this channel. And I'm urging you and you, all of you watching this channel, that if you are passionate about having something to say, you have a YouTube account, go and prepare your YouTube channel and make it your soapbox. This is my social democratic little soapbox where I can share my point of view about common sense social democracy with the American twist to it. That Eugene Debs, Norman Thomas, Michael Harrington, Bernie Sanders twist to this. So, and also, my gosh, I can't stress this enough. Leave a comment. I'm Bernie Bro. I'll see you next time. And if Bernie Sanders runs in 2024, I urge you to support him. Thank you.